Welcome back to Crime Documentary Files. Today, we'll be exploring two cases. In early May 2013, a police station in New Taipei City received an unexpected call from an elderly woman. She reported that her granddaughter, Chen Yuru, was supposed to be attending Fujian Catholic University, but she hadn't been able to reach her for over 10 days. She had searched everywhere, but there was absolutely no trace of her. Upon receiving the report, police immediately began their investigation and confirmed that Yuru had indeed vanished from her daily life for quite some time. But how could a young woman, a college student, go missing for more than 10 days without anyone noticing? To answer this question, Yuru's grandmother tearfully explained the circumstances. It turned out that Yuru's parents had passed away long ago. She had an older brother, but he rarely kept in touch or showed concern for his sister. Yuru herself was quite introverted, quiet, and reserved, which meant she didn't have many close friends. Her life had been far from easy. After graduating high school, she had dropped out of further education and worked various jobs to support herself. It wasn't until later, after experiencing enough of life's hardships, that she realized the importance of education and decided to return to college. Before her disappearance, Yuru had always lived alone in a small rented room, leading a fairly isolated life and rarely reaching out to family or friends. It was precisely because of this solitude and lack of social contact that her disappearance went unnoticed for so long. Had it not been for a call from a professor informing her grandmother about Yuru's continuous absences from class, the family might never have realized she was missing. After getting a general understanding of the situation, police went to investigate Yuru's rented room. Inside, they discovered a diary filled with melancholic entries. It was clear that Yuru had suffered a breakup, and her heart was filled with the pain of lost love. Could this young woman have chosen to cut off contact with the outside world because of heartbreak, or perhaps something worse? Police quickly identified the person who had broken Yuru's heart, her ex-boyfriend, Chen. He was an upperclassman at the same university, a cheerful and outgoing athlete. He told police that he and Yuru had broken up 2 years earlier due to incompatible personalities, and they had barely kept in touch since then, so he knew nothing about her whereabouts. During their investigation, police discovered that Yuru had loved this boyfriend with profound devotion. The clearest evidence was her personal photo album, which contained countless pictures of them together, each capturing happy moments they had shared. Throughout their relationship, Yuru had poured all her heart and affection into it. She would rack her brain thinking of ways to throw meaningful birthday parties for her boyfriend, even designing and giving him custom cartoon illustrations in a unique style. Most notably, even after they had broken up, Yuru continued to regularly write birthday cards to him. Ironically, on his end, Chen didn't seem to reciprocate those feelings at all. He was quite the ladies' man. Even while he was dating Yuru, he frequently took photos with other girls. According to Chen's statement to police, he and Yuru had officially broken up in 2010. After the breakup, Yuru had continued to hold out hope and persistently tried to salvage the relationship, hoping to reconcile and get back together. However, Chen not only firmly refused to reconsider, but quickly found a new girlfriend, completely disregarding Yuru's feelings. This caused her immense pain and heartbreak. Nevertheless, after thorough investigation and verification, police eventually ruled out Chen as a suspect, determining he had no connection to Yuru's mysterious disappearance. Around the same time, a crucial lead unexpectedly emerged from Yuru's close friend. Worried about her friend's safety, she had tried guessing Yuru's email password and fortunately succeeded. After logging into the email account, she discovered a significant piece of information: a high-speed rail ticket booked for April 27, 2013, traveling from Banqiao Station in New Taipei to Chiayi. The train departed at 1:08 p.m. and was scheduled to arrive in Chiayi at 2:24 p.m. the same day. Notably, just one day earlier, on April 26th, Yuru had appeared at a supermarket near her home, behaving completely normally with no signs of anything unusual. So why had she suddenly decided to travel to Chiayi, a city far from where she lived? Digging deeper into the investigation, police examined Yuru's phone records and discovered that on April 27th, she had received calls from two completely unfamiliar phone numbers. What was particularly notable was that these numbers belonged to what's commonly known as burner phones or unregistered SIMs, phone numbers registered anonymously that can't be traced back to their actual owners. These are the types of numbers that scammers and criminals typically use when committing crimes to avoid detection. Because of their anonymous nature, police had great difficulty tracking down the true identities of whoever owned those two mysterious numbers. On the day of her disappearance, after receiving those two mysterious calls, Yuru's phone went completely silent, with no further incoming or outgoing calls recorded. It was as though she had completely vanished after that point. However, since investigating the owners of those two mysterious numbers would require significant time and effort, police decided to temporarily set that avenue aside and pursue other leads first. While examining Yuru's email, police also discovered another rather surprising piece of information. It turned out that, devastated by her ex-boyfriend's new relationship, Yuru had turned to mystical spiritual methods, hoping to sever his romantic fortune. She had secretly contacted a spiritual master named Li Tianren, who managed a Taoist temple in the area. According to Li Tianren's account to police, around November 2010, upon learning that her ex-boyfriend had quickly found a new girlfriend, a distressed Yuru came to him desperately seeking a ritual to cut off her ex's romantic luck. Li Tianren performed the ritual 3 times consecutively, and even drew talismans for her to carry, collecting a total of 50,000 new Taiwan dollars, approximately 1,600 US dollars, for his services. Unfortunately, despite spending a considerable sum and placing all her faith in these spiritual rituals, Yuru was never able to see her ex-boyfriend change his mind and return to her. He continued happily with his new girlfriend without ever looking back. When Yuru expressed her disappointment, Li Tianren explained that the rituals hadn't been as effective as hoped because Yuru couldn't provide her ex-boyfriend's specific address, preventing the talisman's energy from accurately targeting him. For this reason, in early 2011, Yuru approached Li Tianren expressing her desire to hire a private investigator to surveil her romantic rival, her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. She thought that while doing so, she could also discover her ex's specific address, giving the spiritual master the necessary information to make his rituals more effective. Upon hearing Yuru's request, Li Tianren recommended a credit company called Fast and Accurate. In reality, this was a private detective agency operating under the guise of a credit company. However, when police questioned him about his connection to this company, Li Tianren seemed eager to distance himself from any responsibility. He told police that he hadn't actually recommended the company himself. Rather, a female devotee who regularly visited his temple had suggested it. This devotee had previously hired investigators from that company, found their services decent and their fees much lower than other agencies, and had enthusiastically recommended them to Yuru. This Fast and Accurate credit company was headquartered in Taichung, about 76 miles from Fujian Catholic University, where Yuru was studying. The company's owner was named Huang Wenjin. This name immediately put investigators on high alert. The reason was that during their search of Yuru's rented room, police had found 2 money transfer receipts for extremely large amounts. One receipt was for 3 million new Taiwan dollars, and the other was for 5 million new Taiwan dollars, totaling 8 million new Taiwan dollars, equivalent to approximately 260,000 US dollars. What was notable was that this entire enormous sum had been transferred from Yuru's bank account to someone named Wenjin. This coincidence in names couldn't be accidental, and it opened up an entirely new and promising avenue of investigation. How could an ordinary college student like Yuru possess such an enormous sum to transfer to someone else? It turned out that before passing away, Yuru's parents had left her a fairly valuable inheritance, a 2-story apartment. When tracing the source of the funds, police discovered that the first transfer of 3 million NTD came from Yuru mortgaging the apartment inherited from her parents to take out a bank loan. Shortly after, in early January 2013, Yuru decided to sell the house outright at a bargain price. According to market valuation at the time, this two-story apartment was worth approximately 7.5 million new Taiwan dollars. Yet for some unknown reason, Yuru agreed to sell it for only 4.3 million NTD, nearly half its actual value. After paying off her previous bank loan, the remaining approximately 1.2 million NTD mysteriously vanished without a trace. The second transfer to Wenjin was a check for 5 million new Taiwan dollars, which fortunately had not yet been cashed. Adding it all up, it was clear that Yuru had given virtually all her assets to a man named Wenjin. In the 3 days immediately before the incident, Yuru and Wenjin had exchanged more than 20 phone calls per day. Such unusually frequent and dense communication clearly indicated that their relationship was far from a simple client service provider arrangement. There was clearly something much more complex and suspicious going on. Police quickly located Wenjin for questioning, demanding he explain his relationship with Yuru. Facing police questions, Wenjin appeared quite calm and gave his statement. He said he and Yuru had met by chance through an online video game. After chatting and interacting through the game multiple times, they gradually developed feelings and became romantically involved. Wenjin also claimed that throughout their relationship, he regularly provided Yuru with living expenses, giving her approximately 200,000 new Taiwan dollars, about 6,500 US dollars each time. Because of his consistent financial support, Yuru had gradually accumulated a decent amount of savings. Regarding the two transfer receipts totaling 8 million new Taiwan dollars that police had found, Wenjin explained that 3 million of it was an investment Yuru had given him to support his business expansion. Originally, he only owned one credit company called Fast and Accurate in Taichung, and thanks to Yuru's investment, he had enough capital to establish a second company. Wenjin firmly insisted that he had already fully repaid this 3 million investment to Yuru. As for the remaining 5 million NTD, he explained it was a love deposit between the two of them, a promise and commitment to their relationship. However, Wenjin added that shortly before Yuru's disappearance, they had decided to break up after realizing their personalities weren't compatible. And since the breakup, he had no knowledge of and no interest in Yuru's whereabouts. Wenjin's statement sounded smooth, coherent, and airtight at first, seemingly well prepared in advance. However, when police cross-referenced and verified each detail, they discovered his statement was actually full of holes and contradictions. First, regarding how the two had met, Wenjin claimed they'd connected through online gaming. However, through their prior investigation, police had clearly established that Yuru had learned about Wenjin through an introduction from the spiritual master Li Tianren. It had nothing whatsoever to do with any online game. Second, Wenjin insisted he had fully repaid the 3 million NTD investment to Yuru. But when police examined Yuru's bank transaction history, they found no record of any funds being transferred from Wenjin. Furthermore, according to travel records, Wenjin had never set foot in New Taipei or Taipei, where Yuru lived and studied. If he hadn't met her in person and hadn't made a bank transfer, how had he returned the money? Faced with this question from police, Wenjin couldn't provide any reasonable explanation, simply insisting stubbornly that he had paid back the 3 million without any evidence to prove it. As for the 5 million new Taiwan dollars that Wenjin called a love deposit, police clearly didn't believe this explanation either. If a relationship required a deposit as a guarantee, common sense would dictate that Wenjin should have been the one providing it, not Yuru. Wenjin was 13 years older than Yuru, a worldly man who was already married. Not only did he have a wife at home, but he also had a young, attractive secretary serving as his mistress in his office. Poor Yuru was merely counted as his second mistress among the women orbiting this man. Anyone with discerning eyes could see this was clearly the familiar scheme of a sleazy man exploiting the naivety of a college girl for his own gain. The relationship between them was completely unequal, and Yuru was nothing but a victim in Wenjin's calculating game of romance. Continuing the interrogation, police asked Wenjin about April 27th, the day Yuru took the high-speed train to Chiayi, and whether the two had met that day. Wenjin admitted that they did indeed have a meeting scheduled. However, he claimed the meeting didn't go smoothly as planned. The two had gotten into an argument about something, The atmosphere became tense and unpleasant, and they quickly parted ways in frustration. Wenjin insisted that since that unpleasant meeting, they had neither contacted each other nor met again. Compiling and analyzing all the evidence, police concluded that Wenjin was the most suspicious person with the clearest motive to harm Yuru. The complicated financial relationship, the contradictory and flawed statements, and the fact that he was the last person to meet with Yuru, all pointed suspicion toward him. However, on April 27th, he had a perfect alibi proving he hadn't been in Chiayi. Without direct evidence placing him at the scene, police had no legal basis to arrest him. In this deadlock, the only hope for cracking this mysterious case lay in the two mysterious phone calls from burner phones that Yuru had received that day. Facing this impasse, police decided to petition the court for permission to conduct wiretaps and extract phone data. After receiving approval, police extracted all mobile phone call data from every number that had been active in the vicinity of Chiayi High-Speed Rail Station on April 27th. The volume of data collected was enormous. After more than half a year of painstaking work sifting through this mountain of information, police finally identified a man named Shi Kun-chi. His main occupation was as a public bus driver. However, on the side, he also worked for a credit company, carrying out tasks as directed by his boss. And that boss was none other than Wenjin. When interrogated by police, Shi Kun-chi revealed crucial information about April 27, 2013. He admitted that on that day, he had received orders from Wenjin and carried out 3 different tasks for his employer. The first task involved an adultery case. Wenjin assigned him to secretly follow and photograph someone's mistress. The second task was an order to use a hard plastic pipe to beat a mistress. However, Shi Kun-chi refused to carry out this request. The third task was to drive to Chiayi High-Speed Rail Station to pick up a girl and bring her back to Taichung. Shi Kun-chi followed the instructions exactly, picked up the girl at the station, drove her to Taichung, and handed her directly over to Wenjin. That girl was Yuru. Kun-chi's detailed testimony immediately became crucial evidence in the case. With this statement, police finally had sufficient legal grounds to arrest Wenjin. Without a moment's hesitation, police immediately went to Wenjin's credit company to execute the arrest warrant and conduct a search. During the search, in the pocket of the jeans Wenjin was wearing, police found 2 important pieces of evidence: a burner SIM card and an encrypted USB drive. After analysis and comparison, police confirmed that this very SIM card had been used to call Yuru on the day of her disappearance. This was one of the 2 mysterious calls that police had spent over half a year trying to trace. The encrypted USB was also quickly decrypted by police technical experts. However, what they discovered inside left everyone shocked and outraged. The USB contained videos showing Yuru completely unclothed, while Wenjin drew talismans on her body. Even more horrifying, there were videos documenting the entire process of her being sexually assaulted while in an unconscious state. What made it even more disgusting was that Yuru wasn't the only victim of this devil in human disguise. The USB also contained similar videos of 2 other women. Wenjin had been brazen enough to specifically photograph each victim's identification card, as if they were proud trophies. These images now became irrefutable evidence of his guilt. Additionally, during the search, police found a medication bag from a psychiatric department. Inside was a powerful, fast-acting sedative. This was the tool Wenjin had used to drug his victims. Yet despite the mountain of evidence stacking against him, Wenjin maintained a defiant, stubborn, and obstinate attitude to the very end. He completely denied any accusations related to Yuru's disappearance, insisting on his innocence. Without Yuru's body, without a corpse, without direct evidence proving Yuru was dead, police didn't have sufficient legal grounds to charge Wenjin with murder. They could only hold him in custody and continue extending the investigation. Just as the investigation reached a dead end, an unexpected breakthrough occurred. Wenjin suddenly and voluntarily asked to confess. Not only did he admit that he was the one who had killed Yuru, but he also personally led police to where he had buried her body. What made many people wonder was why someone who had been so stubborn and defiant would suddenly completely change his attitude and willingly confess and cooperate with police. According to Wenjin's own explanation, during his time in detention, he had barely had a single good night's sleep. Every night he was tormented by horrifying nightmares. Finally, unable to endure it any longer, Wenjin had to surrender and confess his crimes to police to free himself from the torment. Under Wenjin's guidance, the police team traveled to Taichung. They arrived at a desolate area beneath an overpass on Section 7 of Huanzhong Road in Wuri District. There was a small forest overgrown with trees and rarely visited. Following Wenjin's precise directions, police began digging and eventually found a set of human skeletal remains buried underground. After conducting DNA testing and comparing it with biological samples from the victim's family, the results confirmed that these were indeed Yuru's remains. After the body was found, Wenjin had no reason left to deny anything. He confessed the entire sequence of events in detail. According to his confession, Yuru had initially come to his credit company seeking to hire a private investigator to find her ex-boyfriend's address. Through their repeated interactions, Wenjin gradually realized that Yuru was an extremely naive, innocent, and trusting young woman. Seeing this weakness, the evil nature within him awakened, and he began hatching dark schemes. Wenjin told Yuru that he could also perform talisman rituals, even better than other spiritual masters, so why waste money finding someone else? The first time, Wenjin took Yuru to a motel and had her drink what he called a miracle potion, which was actually a sedative he had prepared. He then drew talismans on her body. After this ritual, unexpectedly within a week, her ex-boyfriend actually reached out to Yuru. Although they didn't get back together, Yuru now believed in Wenjin's abilities and asked him to continue performing rituals. The second time, they went to the same motel. Yuru drank the miracle potion, and while unconscious, was sexually assaulted by Wenjin. Afterward, Wenjin used sweet words to manipulate her into becoming his girlfriend. Yuru, naive and recently emotionally wounded, gradually transferred her devoted feelings for her ex-boyfriend to Wenjin under his honeyed words. Even knowing that Wenjin had a wife and mistress, she didn't break off the relationship. Seeing how easily she could be deceived, Wenjin hatched another scheme. First, he had Yuru take out a loan of 3 million NTD to invest in his second credit company in Taichung. Then he convinced her to sell her house. Through 2 intermediaries, he sold the house, worth 7.5 million new Taiwan dollars, for only 4.3 million new Taiwan dollars, pocketing a commission in the process. When Yuru had been scammed out of everything and lost her value to him, Wenjin no longer wanted to deal with her devotion and proposed breaking up. Naturally, Yuru refused to let go and continuously pestered him. Wenjin realized that Yuru was alone with no close relatives. If she disappeared from the world, wouldn't their financial dispute simply vanish too? So he exploited Yuru's superstitious nature, impersonated a spiritual master online, and lured her to Chiayi. He purchased 3 burner SIM cards in advance for communication during the crime. He told Yuru that a spiritual master's assistant would meet her when she got off the train. Then he found Kun Chi, gave him a bottle of sedative he had prepared, and told him to have the girl he picked up drink it. Yuru got into Kun Chi's car, drank the sedative, and quickly fell unconscious. Kun Chi drove her to Taichung and handed her over to Wenjin. Wenjin put Yuru in his car and gave her more sedative to prevent her from suddenly waking up. Then he drove to a remote house he had rented in advance and killed her. Wenjin transported Yuru's body to a deserted forest, dug a hole, and buried her remains. He even found an abandoned cabinet nearby and placed it on top of the mound to prevent wild dogs from digging it up. In 2014, the Taichung District Prosecutor's Office indicted Huang Wenjin on murder charges and Shi Kunqi as an accomplice. The prosecution emphasized that Huang Wenjin's actions were extremely vicious and showed no remorse, and they requested a severe sentence. Meanwhile, Shi Kunqi was considered for leniency because he had confessed. However, the initial verdict sparked fierce public outrage. Although Huang Wenjin was convicted of a series of serious crimes including murder, sexual assault, fraud, and secret filming, the court still determined that his method of killing was not particularly brutal, reasoning that the victim had already been unconscious and there were no obvious external injuries. Based on this controversial reasoning, the court sentenced Huang Wenjin to life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. Shi Kunqi received a lighter sentence. This decision immediately ignited a wave of harsh public criticism. On July 16, 2015, Taiwan's Supreme Court rejected the appeal and upheld the life imprisonment sentence for Huang Wenjin, officially closing one of Taiwan's most controversial and outrage-inducing cases. The second case takes place in Hong Kong. She was only 23 years old, but she had already made a name for herself as a popular yoga instructor on social media. In just a few hours, she was supposed to board a flight to the United States to begin a 3-month training program. But she never showed up at the airport. When she was found, her body lay in the bathtub of an upscale hotel apartment, bearing more than 30 stab wounds. She was dead. Who could have done something so brutal to her? And how did this case, which shook all of Hong Kong, unfold? On June 30th, 2022, a missing person notice began spreading like wildfire across social media. Nearly all of Hong Kong seemed to be asking the same question. Where is Zhou Huixian? She was a yoga instructor and a familiar face online. Standing about 5 feet 5 inches tall, she had a well-proportioned figure, a beautiful face, and a gentle demeanor. On her personal page, she frequently shared photos of her daily life and yoga practice, interacting warmly with her fans. Looking through those photos, it wasn't hard to tell she came from a well-off family. Luxury travel, fine dining, wanting for nothing. Her looks and figure rivaled any actress, and combined with her solid yoga skills, it was no surprise she had risen to online fame so quickly. The story begins on June 29th. Huixian was planning to catch a flight in the early hours of the next morning to attend a 3-month yoga training program in the United States. That afternoon, around 4 p.m., she met with her father. Throughout their conversation, he noticed nothing unusual about his daughter. On the contrary, she seemed quite excited and eager about her upcoming trip. Later that evening, her father remembered a few things he wanted to remind her about before she left. He called her phone and sent messages online, but received no response. Thinking she was probably catching some sleep before her early morning flight, he didn't want to disturb her and stopped trying to reach her. But by the early morning hours, exactly when Huixian should have been at the airport, her father still couldn't get through to her. Surely by now she would answer her phone. Worried, he drove straight to her apartment to check on her. When he walked in, he saw her luggage still sitting in the room. It hadn't been touched. He immediately called the airline and received an answer that made his heart sink. There was no record of Huixian boarding the flight. Now truly alarmed, at 1:15 p.m. he went to the police station to file a missing person report. At the same time, he asked friends to post appeals for information on Facebook, hoping someone might know where his daughter was. As soon as the family posted the missing person notice online, the news spread rapidly. Huixian's fans and yoga students quickly learned what had happened and rushed to share the post, hoping to help locate her. Everyone was puzzled. She had clearly been excited about her training trip to the US, so why had she suddenly vanished right before she was supposed to leave? Where had Huixian gone? While filing the police report, Huixian's father also went to the apartment building where she lived to request surveillance footage. What he saw in the video immediately caught his attention. At 4:34 p.m. that day, a man appeared at the building entrance, wearing a black t-shirt, white shorts, athletic shoes, and a black face mask. He swiped an access card and entered the building. Since there was no security guard in the lobby at the time, he walked straight to the elevator and went upstairs without anyone stopping him. About 6 minutes later, between 4:40 and 4:42 p.m., the camera captured Huixian and this man stepping into the elevator to go down. In the elevator, the two appeared to be talking about something. The man even reached out and touched Huixian. For her part, she took her phone from her purse to answer a call. A moment later, the elevator stopped at a floor where several people were waiting to get on. Perhaps because the elevator was about to become crowded, Huixian took the initiative to pull the man's hand and step out. The two then took the stairs down to the lobby. The camera continued to record them holding hands as they walked out of the building, then disappeared from view. Huixian's father recognized the man in the video. Suspecting it was his daughter's ex-boyfriend, Lao Junming, he immediately informed the police. After verification, at 2:30 p.m. on June 30th, police called Junming to inquire about the situation, but he insisted he knew absolutely nothing about Huixian's disappearance. This was hard to understand. The camera clearly showed him holding Huixian's hand as they left the building together, yet now he claimed not to know where she was. Wasn't this a blatant lie in broad daylight? Just as police were organizing their files and preparing to take further investigative steps, an unexpected development occurred. That very evening, the perpetrator walked into the police station and turned himself in. And it was none other than Junming, the same man who just hours earlier had claimed to know nothing. But this time, he didn't come alone. Beside him was a lawyer, indicating he had prepared in advance. Perhaps unable to bear the psychological pressure any longer, Junming revealed Huixian's current location and handed over the hotel room key card. After 10 p.m., police immediately arrived at a 5-star hotel in Tsimsha-Tsui. When they opened the door to the room, the scene before them made everyone shudder. Huixian's body lay in the bathtub, the water stained red with blood. Her body bore more than 30 stab wounds, including 8 to the left side of her chest, near her heart, along with a deep cut across her throat. These were the wounds that had directly caused her death. Forensic experts estimated she had been dead for less than 24 hours. Looking around the room, furniture was in disarray, with clear signs of a struggle. Huixian had fought back. Her will to survive had been strong. Police collected all evidence from the scene and brought it back to the station for further investigation. Preliminary investigation results showed that Huixian had been stabbed more than 30 times with a knife measuring about 10.5 inches in length, leading to her death. Police suspected the case was connected to disputes over romance and money. Based on the evidence collected, her ex-boyfriend Junming was arrested on suspicion of murder. In photos released by the media, Junming was escorted by 2 police officers, his head covered with a black hood, hands cuffed behind his back, surrounded by numerous police vehicles deployed at the scene. As soon as the case was exposed, the online community erupted. On one hand, people mourned for Huixian, a 23-year-old girl who should have had her whole future ahead of her. On the other hand, outrage was directed at Junming. Netizens quickly dug into the 28-year-old perpetrator's past and dubbed him the worst man of the century. Many revealed that Junming had previously been involved with multiple women, was mired in debt, had beaten girlfriends, and had even pressured women into having abortions. It was fair to say he was steeped in unforgivable sins. So who exactly was Junming? According to available information, he had only graduated from high school and currently had no stable job or legitimate occupation, still living with his family somewhere in Hong Kong. However, what was notable was that he had quite an impressive background in martial arts. From a young age, Junming had received formal martial arts training and had been an official member of the Hong Kong martial arts team. In 2008, he was honored to represent Hong Kong at the Second World Youth Wushu Championships, where he achieved remarkable results. A gold medal in the 23-form Tai Chi Chuan, a silver medal in the 32-form Tai Chi sword, 4th place in spear techniques, and was even named Outstanding Athlete. These were truly admirable achievements for a young athlete. Had he continued to pursue this professional martial arts path, his future would certainly have been bright and promising. On one side was a martial arts practitioner, on the other a popular yoga instructor on social media. At first glance, they seemed to belong to 2 completely different worlds, with lives that would never intersect. So how exactly did they meet and get together? According to what netizens shared and speculated, Junming had happened to see Huixian's videos online, and drawn by her beautiful appearance and captivating presence, had reached out to contact her. As for Huixian, she had no idea about Junming's true character or his troubled past. Under the sweet words and empty promises that Junming kept whispering in her ear, Huixian gradually fell for him and accepted his persistent pursuit. But what Huixian could never have imagined was that this seemingly romantic relationship would be the beginning of a tragedy, bringing her countless worries, pain, and sleepless nights, and ultimately costing her precious life at the prime of her youth. So what exactly happened between them? What was the true nature of their relationship? Was Junming a former boyfriend they had definitively broken up with? A current boyfriend? Or were they in some ambiguous state between breaking up and getting back together? These questions left many curious and wanting to understand. Analyzing the surveillance footage extracted from the apartment building reveals some noteworthy details. First, Junming used an access card for Huixian's apartment building to let himself in. It's important to know that this type of access card for an upscale apartment building is typically only issued to property owners or tenants. So why did Junming have this card? Had Huixian given it to him for convenience? Second, only about 6 minutes after Junming went upstairs, he came back down with Huixian. In the elevator, and as they left the building, they held hands naturally and intimately, like any other couple in love. There was absolutely no sign that Huixian was being forced, coerced, or was reluctant to go with him. Therefore, based solely on their demeanor and gestures that day, it would be difficult to conclude definitively that they were broken up. On the contrary, the recorded images showed their relationship still appeared quite close and intimate. According to what Huixian's close friends revealed to the media, the relationship between these two had actually weathered countless storms, with multiple breakups followed by reconciliations, repeating in an endless cycle. The severity of their conflicts had even escalated to the point of causing scenes at the police station. It turned out that just a few months before the incident, Huixian had personally gone to the local police station to file a report, accusing her boyfriend Junming of physically assaulting her. Not only that, Junming had also used her private, intimate photos to threaten and psychologically control her. However, for unknown reasons, the case was dropped and never properly resolved. Then, as had happened many times before, the two reconciled and got back together once again. But this turbulent relationship couldn't remain peaceful for long. Recently, things between them had once again hit serious trouble, and the warning lights were flashing red. This time, Huixian seemed to have truly reached her breaking point and was determined to end this toxic relationship once and for all. She decided to make a clean break, planning to use her upcoming months-long yoga training trip to the US to get away from Junming and start a completely new life, free from the nightmares and suffering this relationship had brought her. Based on this information, netizens theorized that Junming's love had turned to hatred. Unable to accept being abandoned by Huixian, he had deliberately arranged to meet her right before her trip to America in order to kill her. However, whether the true cause behind this heartbreaking case matches what netizens speculated remains to be determined through thorough police investigation and official conclusions. What's notable is that since his arrest, Junming has maintained absolute silence, not uttering a single word about what happened. Because of this silence, the true motive behind his murder of his ex-girlfriend remains an unsolved mystery to this day. On the morning of Monday, July 4th, Junming was brought to the Kowloon City Magistrate's Court to face charges for the crime he had committed. And those are the two cases for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.